we are recording this morning's web seminar, and it will be posted on the California College Pathways website, which is there on your screen, cacollegepathways.org. In addition to the recording, I will post a copy of the slides from this morning's presentation as well, so you can have access to those on the website. We're going to hear from the panelists first and then do questions and answers after we hear the full presentation. You should have a control panel on your screen that allows you to submit questions. So you can submit questions at any point during the web seminar, and then we'll go ahead and take all the questions at the very end. After the web seminar, we are going to be sending you an email with a link to a very, very brief survey. It's just a 3-question survey. It's really important to us to be able to get feedback about what you think of the webinars we're putting on, so that we can make sure we're providing you with information that is most relevant to you. So if you're able to take just 2 minutes to complete our quick survey, that would be super helpful to us. And so that's our logistics this morning. I'm really excited that we have 2 panelists this morning, Sylvia Sensiper and Michelle Dean. Sylvia runs the Guardian Professions program at UC Davis, and she's going to talk more about that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sylvia.
Thank you, Debbie. So I am really hoping that my PowerPoint works here. I'm not sure, but if it doesn't, I will log back out and log back in as quickly as possible to make sure that it works. So I direct the Guardian Professions program at UC Davis. And many of you probably know about that program already. It's a support program for students who are interested in pursuing advanced degrees and have a background in foster care. And we have our mission that we often talk about in terms of 4 areas that we help students. We educate undergraduates about graduate school possibilities, the advantages of earning an advanced degree, and some of the career opportunities that are associated with advanced degrees. We offer supportive services to former foster youth to apply for advanced degrees, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. We coach applicants and provide small scholarships. As many of you know, it's very expensive to apply to graduate schools, particularly some of the more technical graduate schools in the healthcare field, such as medical school and dental school and physician's assistant program. It can be very pricey. Even getting a teaching credential, can cost students about $1,000. And we provide supportive services while students are enrolled in graduate school. We have a cohort here at UC Davis, and the students that I have helped get into graduate school often write me, and we've been able to provide them with some continuing financial assistance and also some help with fellowships and things like that. Sorry about this. Hold on one second. So applying for an advanced degree is a complex process, as many of you know. And during the application,
sorry, Sylvia, I'm going to jump in here. It looks like we are no longer seeing your screen.
All right, let me go back and see what happened. Can you see it now? I wonder if it logged me out of the webinar.
Yes, you appear to have been completely logged out of the webinar. So I think that you
how do I get back in? Oh, to click on that.
Use the link that you originally used to log in.
Okay. My apologies to everyone. This is going to be a slow webinar. I have to do this. Can you see it now?
I'm going to make you the presenter. There we go. All right, we're back in business. Sorry about that, everyone.
So for application cycle 2014-2015, I ran 3 online classes for different phases of the process of going to graduate school, and they were called Getting Prepared for Graduate School. The online, so in the fall of 2014, I had students who were involved start looking at programs, start talking about programs they were interested in the second part of the program in winter quarter. UC Davis is on the quarter system. They got a little bit more information. They went to info sessions. They start looking at some of the tests that they needed to take. And in the spring of that year, then we started writing some of the application materials. I have found that students who start in June or even the summer or that spring have a lot more time to prepare really good and competitive materials. There's a lot of essays and writing and thinking that goes into the graduate school application. Sometimes students have to take tests twice. They need to maybe sometimes have some pre-professional experience that they haven't worked at yet. And so having that extra time really helps them over the summer. I also did an online class that started in spring 2015 for students who were already ready to work on their applications and apply this past fall. And so between the material for these classes and the work of mentoring about 40 students through the application process, that's what has resulted in the website that I put up this past summer called Getting Prepared for Graduate School. And there's also an accompanying website, instructor's website, and that's primarily what I'm going to talk about today. So here is the website interface. This is not clickable. This is what you would see if you go to the website. And there are, you can see there's 3 different sections that correspond to the classes that I taught: process and discovery, getting things in order and put yourself on paper. And then there's a portal, a link for the professional schools, dental school, medical school, physician assistant school, and actually I think public health all have a portal where a student would put in one central application and then secondary applications for individual schools. And then I've created some teaching cases which are to help students understand a lot about the culture of academia, and each teaching case poses a problem that a student might have faced, and these are all based on successful students, and they pose a problem or issue that a student might have faced, and then it's left open, but students are given through the narrative of the rest of the case information about what information might help that student solve that problem. So they're based on the way business school, management school, and public policy cases are written, and they help students start to think strategically about issues that come up when they're in school and thinking about going to graduate school. So now the next slides will go through each one of the sections. Here is the URL for the website. It's also available from the UC Davis website under our particular web page that is for the Guardian Professions program. So both of those websites are there. So in the first section, process and discovery, there's an opening page that speaks directly to students. Many students say they want to go to graduate school, but they're not sure what they want to do. And so the process of discovery is itemized over the next 3 tabs, which you can see that I clicked on the process and discovery tab so that you can see what else is listed under there. Talk with others, attend events, and immerse yourself. So the introduction sets the tone. Going to graduate school involves some uncertainty. You need to start doing your own research and asking lots of questions. You don't have to know what you want to do. Many students will give me, kind of substitute answers to that question. I had one student once who told me she wanted to be a CPA, and I said, why, and she said, well, I've been told I'm good at math, and I asked her if she knew what a CPA did, and she did not. So students will think that they need to know before they start looking, but they don't. And that section actually tells students you can have any kind of direction. You can just have the idea, I want to go to graduate school, and you can start looking, or you can have a very specific idea, I want to be a medical doctor, and start looking at some of the the kinds of things that you'll need to know to do that, and find out what you would need to get on that path. But you don't have to know exactly, and each of those sections offers suggestions on how to help students gain knowledge. So particularly there's go to events, things like going to information sessions, going to career fairs, and then under the immerse yourself, there's things like taking on an internship, having a job, doing professional informational interviews, and then there's also suggestions for students. There are questions, what you might ask a professional. There are pull-down menus to look at some of the pipeline programs that a student might go to under the Immerse Yourself section. So there's lots and lots of information there, and we are continuing to add to those sections as we learn more ourselves. So this is what you would find under the different sections. A student would be suggested to talk to professors, graduate students, professionals, and their own mentors, go to career fairs and information sessions, and volunteer for volunteer positions or professional positions, shadowing a professional, conducting your own research, or work for a professor. The second section is called Getting Things in Order. And as you can see from the pull-down menu, there is program selection, tests and test prep, pre-professional information, pre-professional experience, advisors become references, and a section on whether you should look for a master's, PhD, or joint degree. Getting things in order basically asks students to create a timeline of tasks, tests, and documents. It suggests and advises students that applying for an advanced degree is sometimes iterative. It's not a linear process. You might go down a path thinking you want to be a clinical psychologist and then decide, well, start asking some questions and decide that an MSW might be a broader based degree that would allow you to do more things. There might be funding for that. Once you start asking questions, one of the big things, of course, that comes up is how are you going to pay for graduate school? And some degrees are more lucrative is the wrong word, but some degrees will have expenses paid for. If you go for a PhD instead of a master's degree, you often are part of a professor's funding cycle. And so I've had students that might want to are interested in public health, but might want to do epidemiology, because if they did a PhD in epidemiology, they would have funding, whereas if they did a master's in public health, they would end up paying for themselves. So there's 5 sections to help students get acquainted with some of the requirements. So under program selection, once they've gone through process and discovery, have a better idea, or an idea of maybe a direction or a couple places that they might want to look, then they can start looking for programs. There are actually search engines for the University of California and the CSUs where you can just go in and say, want to do an MSW, and it'll bring up all the programs at every CSU, for instance, that has an MSW program. Or you can search for, teaching credential under the UC search engine, and you can find all the universities rather than going to each university site. It's a little bit simpler. Of course, you're going to have to, if a student wants to look for a private school, they're going to have to go to the website of each school as well. Those are just for the UCs and the CSUs. Then under experience, most degrees expect you to have some kind of pre-professional experience. If you're doing a PhD, you need research experience. A physician assistant program requires 1,000 hours. But even if you're doing a master's in public health or a teacher credential program, programs want to see that you're really dedicated, and that basically the advanced degree is your next step in your career path. Then, of course, every degree program requires that you take some kind of test generally. Uh, some programs are shying away from having students take the GRE, but which is the graduate record exam, and students are a little bit nervous about that. But we do actually the Guardian Professions program can help pay for a prep class and also for the cost of the test itself. Um, Credential students need to take state required tests. Of course, doctors and dental students need to take the MCAT, and the DAT, and law students need to take the LSAT. So most programs have some kind of standardized test that students are required to take and show proof of that when they apply. References. Students need to start thinking about references early and who's going to write their references, and make sure that they get good references. And then they need to decide whether they want to get a master's degree, a PhD, or a joint degree. And that really not only requires talking to people and kind of having a general idea of what they would want to do after they finish their degree and what kind of career path, and just looking around and talking and actually going to information sessions is also really useful. So the third tab is put yourself on paper. And that one is basically all the aspects and components of the application itself. And really, as I stated before, having students start at the beginning of the summer in June is a really good time just to write drafts of these components. Because if they want to apply to more than one school, and I advise students to apply to at least 3 or 5, to ensure that they actually have a place in the following fall, that is not something you want to leave to the last minute. They do require some thought. They do require a couple of drafts. You want to make sure that you're saying things in an appropriate manner and including everything that you want to in these statements. And each one of these pull-down menus has samples that of successful students already. So I've taken the statement of purpose and the personal histories from students that have been successful in getting into school, and students can find samples online. And I did that for a particular reason. Of course, there's many books you can get on statement of purpose, and there you can find them on the web. But particularly with former foster youth, if they're asked to provide some kind of personal information, they're never quite sure how much information or what way in which to narrate their own experience. And so I have a number of samples up that of things I think that are appropriate. All students who are transitioning from being an undergraduate student to a graduate student have trouble with these kinds of essays unless they get a lot of mentoring, because they don't really know what audience they're writing for. But I found that students who have a background in foster care particularly aren't quite sure what kind of personal information. And faculty and admissions committees do want to know that they've overcome adversity. They just want it framed in a certain sort of way so that it is an overcoming of adversity rather than a detailing of their personal experience and what happened in foster care. So it may look like there's 3 different essays: statement of purpose, personal history, and personal statement. We describe on the website the difference in those and which ones you need to use. There's the fellowship statement, and these are mainly constructed for the UCs and the CSUs. I do have a section called Applications for Private Universities, because private universities like to have their own prompts and their own particular ways of students having students write these statements, but these are the general things that students will have to have on any given application. So the statement of purpose, a personal history, or a personal statement, a fellowship statement for any kinds of fellowship or scholarships that they might want to go after, a resume or curriculum vitae. Not all programs ask for that. An addendum. This is often also a good place for students to detail some of the idiosyncrasies on their transcript or their application. Some students often have to end up, particularly students that have a background in foster care. Sometimes they've taken a semester or a quarter off to care for a relative. Sometimes their grades when they were transitioning in their early freshman years weren't so good, and an addendum can help them point to, looking at their last 2 years, which a lot of programs are doing anyway, but it's always good to have a place to talk about helping an admission committee focus the patterns in your application. And then potential mentors. This is something that most students don't know to put in their application. And you always want to have be looking ahead to see what faculty members you would want to work at the university or institution where you are applying to. And then recommendations. Most applications ask for 3 recommendations. So now I'm going to hand it over to Michelle Dean, who is in her 2nd year at UC Davis in the Community Development Department. She is going to talk a little bit about her experience working with the Guardian Professions program when she first came here 2 years ago. And I may be fixing this PowerPoint while she's doing that.
Thank you, Sylvia. Good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Dean. So if anybody has ever applied to graduate school, you know it can be an extremely overwhelming process. So my junior year of undergrad, I ended up receiving an email from Sylvia through the Elite Scholars Program, which is it's like the Guardian Scholars Program, but that's what they called it at my undergrad school. And so we communicated for a while. I'd expressed interest in wanting to go to graduate school. I originally was thinking about doing an MSW, but I wasn't 100% sure. I really liked UC Davis from what I'd heard about it, and the campus looked amazing. So once Sylvia and I discussed my interests and what I might want to do, she showed me the Community Development Graduate Group, and I thought that it could really be a great program for myself. So we ended up setting up a trip for me to come down, which she helped provide funding for. And she also set me up with a program administrator. So, through her, I was able to get meetings with different professors on campus, as well as sit in on some classes and meet some current students. So I feel that was extremely helpful in making a decision to come here. And then from there, once I decided this is where I would like to go, I ended up taking the GRE, and she did help provide funding for that. And then when it came time to writing my thesis statement and personal essays, Sylvia and the program absolutely helped me edit those and make sure I was putting my best self out there, because it can be a very overwhelming process, and there's so much. And when you're navigating a system that you haven't been through before, and you're a first-generation student like myself, it's a lot to figure out. So it's just been an extremely helpful experience, and I've been able to really grow and feel comfortable knowing that I've had this support system on campus. It's not as what's the word? It's not as intense as the undergraduate, like a Guardian Scholars Program is, where we don't have to necessarily have the same kind of check-ins or participation, but we definitely have that support system through this program. And I just, from everyone in the program I've spoken with, it's been extremely useful and beneficial. And, even throughout the time, if I've needed funding for whatever reason, if I've had an emergency, they've been able to provide that, or other opportunities that I've been able to do, such as internships or, working on other documents that we would like to use for other things in the future. But overall, it's just been an extremely beneficial and useful thing. And So I think that's probably all I have to say. But yeah, if you have any questions, I would be more than to answer them towards the end. Thank you.
All right, so it seems like this might work. Let's go to the next slide. Here we go. So the other features on the website are professional schools portals. As I said previously, many professional schools have a portal where you will submit a singular application, and then secondary information is asked for particular schools that are then interested from that. And then there are the teaching cases, narratives about successful applicants. Each case poses a challenge or problem to engage the reader and then provides other information about academic culture. I think many students who come from families, and this is inclusive of a much wider population than students with a background in foster care, but students who are first in their family to go to college. Former foster youth usually fall within that category, but most don't understand that the university is not just about going to classes, and that there are many informal learning opportunities, and a lot of the narratives about successful students detail a lot of that. You know, how they found mentors, how they worked with graduate students, how they found research opportunities, how they were able to email professors, different pipeline programs that they were engaged with. The ways in which they navigated the university is highly detailed in the cases, and I think is very instructive for students simply to read those and see some of the ways in which successful students were able to get through the university and go on to graduate school. And then I have a more information category, and that's for all the important items that didn't fall within any of the other spaces. Part of that is the 4 questions that the UC Davis Teacher Credential Program asks on the application. There's also something about negotiating offers. Students that apply for PhDs often get 2 offers, and they're similar to job offers, and one of my students was even able to get a better offer from UC Irvine because she had an offer also at UC Riverside, and so there's some information about how to go about that in that section. And I've also put up an instructor site, hoping that other people will take up this information and use it to help students start doing some of this work around going to graduate school. I know some schools already do have programs like this. I think I've talked to a couple students at Loyola Marymount that have programs like this, getting students ready to apply to graduate school. But I'm hoping that some of the Guardian Scholar programs can start doing some of this. Of course, the website is self-navigatable. Not sure if that's a word, but students can navigate the website on their own. But you can also use it to teach a class, and that is what the instructor site does. So here is the website for the instructor site. It's not actually on the UC Davis website. It's just here, and also I have sent it to most programs, I believe. So the instructor site looks the same. But there's a few more resources there. Every section is under every tab. There's a little bit of summary of what I have under each section on the main site, and there's also a syllabus, a sample syllabus that an instructor could use that proposes how to teach the material in that section. So it's based on a 10-week quarter system because that's what UC Davis has. So I base it on that. But each week, students would be assigned a different task. So, for instance, if you were teaching a class about process and discovery, one week you might assign students to go and talk to 3 graduate students and find out, or maybe 1 or 2 graduate students about why they went to graduate school, what they hope to do when they're finished, why they applied to the schools that they did, how they got in, if they have funding, everything that you might want to know from a graduate student. And of course, I have sample questions for graduate students on the website as well. If you were teaching a class on put yourself on paper, you might have students write a statement of purpose, or just a draft, or write a personal history, or talk to 3 professors who they want to get recommendations from and ask those professors. So you would just each week use the website to create an assignment for a student that would get them started on the path to creating a competitive application. And then in the teaching cases section, I posted not only the teaching cases, but also an accompanying facilitator's guide. So each case has with it, again, a discussion of how you might teach that case. So the cases some of them are short, 6 to maybe some of them are 10 pages long. Again, they narrate what a successful student, how their trajectory through their undergraduate education, with a very tiny section on their foster care experience, basically simply to say to any reader, look, I have a similar background in education as you. I faced a great deal of adversity, and yet I was still able to, navigate through this institution. So the facilitators' guides have a discussion of what I would hope someone might. I would hope the way in which someone might teach it. Of course, I'm happy to have people use them in whatever way they see that they're beneficial, but this just gives you some direction, some questions you might ask students. What would be the focus of this case? For instance, one case is about a student who took the GRE and did not think he had the GRE scores that he needed to apply to the program that he wanted. So the question posed at the beginning of the case is, does he need to, he's wondering, should he take the GRE again? And then you read through his case, which also has in the back section some emails that he wrote to professors. So you get a whole sense of the journey that this student is taking towards graduate school. And the facilitator's guide helps ask questions that would tease out some of that information that I would think would be important to students who might want to follow a similar path to that student. Just so you know, this spring I'm going to create a mentoring class. My online classes were successful to some degree, but I found that students are at such different points in their progress towards applying to graduate school that it's very hard to do online synchronous class with students. So I'm simply going to be using the website as a curriculum. It's never too early to start considering an advanced degree, so I'm happy that even if I'm going to be sending out a message to all the undergraduate support programs in California. So if you have students that are sophomores or freshmen even, I'm happy to include them in this mentoring class. It will be primarily for students who want to apply next fall. But again, if a student wants to do a PhD and doesn't participate in any research as an undergraduate, then they're probably going to want to do a master's first. So again, if students are interested in going to graduate school and you know of that, the sooner they, if a undergraduate support program director doesn't feel that they have the expertise to help them think about how to get to a PhD, I'm happy to talk to students at any phase in their process towards graduate school. So please have them contact me. So I think that is the end of my part of the presentation. And please, if you have any questions at all, I'm happy to answer them now. Michelle is also happy to answer questions. And I am happy to answer any questions at any time. That's my email, that's our website, and that's our phone number. So thank you very much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. And if there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in. So the first one is somebody's writing in to say that they have a youth who was recently accepted into Davis's medical school. Editorial comment on the question, yay. Not sure if she has formally decided to attend, but the person wants to know generally what type of assistance, financially, emotionally, academically, and with housing can she possibly expect to receive?
I think that will depend somewhat on the student. I think there is very good mentoring in our medical school for students that come from, is she first in her, I guess that there would be a few other questions I would have. If she's ethnic minority or disadvantaged students, they have a lot of support in the medical school already. I'm happy to have her contact me. I think you said she was female, right? Or am I just supposing that?
I believe, not sure, yeah.
Did you say? I can't. Anyway, I'm happy to talk with the student and find out if she wants to come up and visit the school. I could possibly provide some funds to have her come up to UC Davis and visit the school and see. It sounds like she has more than one offer at medical schools, so I can support that. And then it just depends. I have some funding for this year to give to students. What I try to do is make sure that all students have some funding and that I fund students so that they have the least amount of debt when they're coming out of school, and that the debt is proportional to what they can expect to make. So my MSW students, I, of course, often don't have as big a salary as perhaps a medical doctor would coming out of medical school, and so I try to allocate the funding that I have for fellowships proportionally. But definitely have the student contact me, and we can discuss things further.
So I have somebody that had a follow-up question for Michelle.
Hello.
So Michelle, somebody wanted a little more information about what master's degree you are earning at UC Davis. So it's not social work, but if you could say again what it is exactly that you're earning there.
Right. So I am in the community development graduate group. And so a lot of what we do is, or a lot of what the program is about is community organizing, or a lot of nonprofit stuff. And when I say a lot of that, it's also such an interdisciplinary degree that you can kind of make it whatever you want. So, for example, my interest is access to higher education for former foster youth. So whereas originally I was saying I wanted to go into a MSW, I found out that by going through this program, I was able to take the classes I felt was most important to the knowledge I wanted to gain out of a degree. And that's one thing I've really, really enjoyed about this program. It's hard to kind of say exactly what it's about because everyone has such different interests in the program. There's a lot of food access people in the program, a lot of people interested in education, a lot of people that are interested in environmental justice. So it kind of just depends on what you're interested in. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Yeah. So I have another question for Sylvia.
Okay.
So this is a question specifically from the UC Santa Cruz Smith Renaissance Society. So that program at the undergraduate level is not limited to just serving current and former foster youth. They've got, I'm not sure exactly, it doesn't specify maybe homeless youth or, I'm sorry?
Independent students?
Well, I guess the question is, what are the, what's the criteria for somebody to participate in the Guardian Professions program in terms of, do they have to have been formerly in foster care, or is it more broadly defined?
I take the definition of the undergraduate program here, which is if they were in foster care for one day, then we can provide some services for them. So I know that there's some programs where you have to have actually aged out of foster care, emancipated out of foster care. that if were adopted, it doesn't that you aren't eligible. But I have worked with students. Actually, one of my students now was only in foster care for a year, and then his mother had custody of him for the rest of when he was very young, when he was 8, and then his mother raised the rest of the time. But he still qualifies under the guidelines that I have.
Okay.
So I think if there's any questions, someone should ask me, but I think we're pretty broad in our definition.
Right. Great. So another question is, somebody wants to know if you're aware whether there are online graduate programs available for someone interested out of state.
If there are online graduate programs from UC
I'm not
Davis.
sure if this question. Yeah, I'm not sure if this question is. Why don't you answer it specific to UC Davis, and if the question or if that's not the question, you can let me know.
Yeah, there are many online. Well, there are some. UC Davis has some online. I think through our extension, we don't have many online. Maybe what this question is could someone out of state get support for an online program, because online programs are everywhere. That may be the question. I think that would then be if the student had been a foster youth in California, then I could offer support. That's usually that's the other sort of boundary. I have a student at BU who was actually at University of Iowa, but we helped him go to BU because he had been in foster care in California in Bakersfield. So basically he qualified under the guidelines that we have.
So another question, if you can just clarify, are the Guardian Profession Services only available exclusive to UC Davis undergraduate students?
No, I've been working with students across California. Again, so it's any student who's been in, or they don't have to be students. I've been working with people that are out of school and want to go back to grad school. I have a student doing an MBA at USC. He was working in the high-tech industry for a couple years. He was a UC Davis alum, but the services are available to any former foster youth in California as of currently. That is the way that we have been running the program. So our goal is to help as many students as possible get into grad programs, and the grad programs do not have to be California-based programs either. As I said, I have a student at BU doing a PhD in Master's in Social Work. A PhD in social work. I have a medical student that I helped. He's in Oregon, and I just helped a student go for an interview in Arizona for dental school. When you're applying for an advanced degree, the good thing is all you need is one acceptance, but that acceptance can come from anywhere, and it's really important, especially if you're doing a PhD or a medical degree or something, that you apply to multiple places to ensure that you get in. There are many factors that are involved. You can be an excellent student, have good scores, and still not be accepted because there may be, particularly for a PhD, there may be nobody in that department that's interested in what you're studying, or they can't, their budget is such that they can't take on any more students that year. So you just need to, students just need to have a number of options open when they're applying for advanced degrees.
Great. So one last question. Somebody just wanted to re-clarify the eligibility for Guardian Professions. So it's that somebody was in foster care at any point during their life, that they don't have to have been in foster care after their 13th birthday or anything like that. They can have been in foster care at any point. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So those are all the questions that we have. So I want to thank everybody who's on the webinar, and of course say a particular huge thank you to Sylvia and Michelle for sponsoring and putting on this web seminar. I will be sending out the PowerPoint and a link to where we'll post the recording, and of course you've got Sylvia's contact information there, and she's, as she mentioned, always happy to respond to your individual questions. So thank you very much, everybody, and that concludes this morning's web seminar.
Thank you.